Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Todd Hewey, and I am just like pinching myself that he has agreed to come on because I'm so excited. He is a famous filmmaker, and he is making films on near-death experiences and Christian near-death experience. Can I say that? Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's Christians in there. There's non-Christians. We'll get into it, but
Okay.
I'll spell out the logic behind it when we get going.
Okay. Well, feel free to start wherever you like
Well,
and
first,
and take as long as you like.
Peggy, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me on. No venues too large, no venues too small. We are 6 degrees of separation from everyone on the planet, and therefore you never know who's watching and what they can do. This project came to me back in 2016. I was working on something and they wanted to do Inspiration Ministries, of which who I work for, which is David Cirillo. They wanted to do something on NDEs. And so we contacted CBN. We heard about Mary Neal's NDE. And I contacted her to get permission to use CBN's little piece. And I watched some of the NDEs done on YouTube and stuff like that. But, these stories are far more powerful, and the NDE people all say the same thing, that the heavenly experience is so much broader than what we can comprehend in our minds. It's so much more beautiful, so much more deep. You don't want to come back. Doesn't matter how great your life is. You get up there, you're done. It's like, you know what? Pre-K was cool, but I'm moving forward. And that's kind of like what, when I talked to Mary, I felt that. Well, years go by, and finally I put a proposal together just before COVID, and David said, look, I'm going to give you about $450,000 to do a limited series on NDEs. And I said, okay, but I hate reenactments. I've done over 250 reenactments as a cinematographer, shooting motion picture film for Sid Roth for It's Supernatural, Warren Marcus. Love the group, but if I had to do another reenactment, I think I probably would have just swallowed a box of razor blades. I can't stand them. It's like people with little wings on themselves. That's an angel. It's like, no, that's not an angel. Actually, Martha Williamson in Touched by an Angel has got a better concept of who angels are. They just come and go out of your lives. How many people do we know have been touched by angels? And then they disappear. And that's in Mary's episode. And so I called Mary back and I said, what do you think? She says, I don't trust your TV people. She says, I've done several of them. I've done some on Netflix, this one big one that they had on Netflix last year. I saw it. And what they did is they cut out the God story. They leave it as an NDE and they cut out the God story. And I said, okay, I could do better than that. I'm a degreed historian, military historian, did mostly aviation and military related stuff till I came to Inspiration Ministries. And I said, I'm going to tell the story of the NDEer from their perspective, and I am going to get out of the way. I'm a believer in Jesus, got saved in the Jesus movement when I was 16. What's that movie that just came out about the Jesus movement in
Jesus
California?
Revolution. Yep.
Revolution. Yeah, well, I was East Coast Revolution. We were a little late to the party, but he did show up in New England to a United Methodist Church of all things. And the kids got saved, and the revolution went from the basement with 35 kids into the second largest United Methodist Church in all of New England, South United Methodist Church, Manchester, Connecticut. And Jesus came into the church. It was incredible. It's just like the movie. And so getting out of that's a red herring. I got Mary to agree. And then I got Mary Neal to agree to be interviewed.
Okay.
For the series. And I met with my editor, Arturo Meza, brilliant. He's been offered so much money to go work elsewhere, but he loves this project. He loves working with Ministry Outreach and with Answer Quest. Answer Quest is our nonpartisan, in the world of faith, we're on a quest for answers. And so we will interview people and get different perspectives. I hold Christians responsible for knowing what's truth, what's not, and to take a step beyond what they grew up with. I mean, we have a lot of Catholic brothers and sisters who think, my best friend growing up, I grew up in a totally Catholic neighborhood as an Irish kid. I was Protestant. I was an outsider. I was a heretic. He's still waiting for me to get saved. I'm 65. I said, I love Jesus. I don't need to be saved. He says, well, you're not in the church. So I will take a step beyond that. And I will basically say, you know what? Jesus said in Revelation, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if any man hears my voice and opens that door, I will come into him and sup with him and he with me. And also Howard Storm, who's our third NDE candidate, he said, C.S. Lewis was right. Hell is locked from the inside. And that means people who want no part of God in any way, shape, or form, they close the door and they won't open the door. So it ties in with Revelation saying, behold, Jesus is standing at the door and knocking, and you're going, well, I'm not answering. Right. And so God says, okay, I give you your free will. You want to be free of me? Have it your way. I can't be there. I cannot be, my light cannot be there. My love cannot be there. You will be with other like-minded individuals like yourself, which is to me, myself, and I club, and to heck with everyone else, which means it's Lord of the Flies on steroids. That's hell. It's a horror story. It goes beyond flames. I think hell is worse than flames because and as Howard Storm, if you go onto the website, lifebeyonddeath.tv, that's lifebeyonddeath.tv. You'll see the trailers for Howard Storm. You'll see the trailer for Mary Neal. And you'll see the trailer for Eben Alexander. I look at it as this way as a historian. NDEs is like a giant elephant. And everyone's coming at it from different perspectives. And they're seeing different parts of the elephant. Now, do I have to accept every NDE? No. But the thing is, I know who I am. I know what I'm rooted on. But I also say, God, reveal to me what is your truth, because he is bigger than all of us. He can handle any doubt, any question. He can handle any pushback. God is way bigger than that. Just like we're the little ant standing at the top of an anthill looking at the universe saying, it's me. It's all about me. No, it's not. Get a grip. He's a big God. He can handle all the questions and all the doubts. Don't be afraid of examining that which you're afraid of. That's what I say as a degreed historian. Don't be afraid. Go there. He's a big God. If you don't agree with it, well, let God take care of it. Because if that person watches these NDEs, the ones that Pegi's doing, 348 and counting, the way some of these other folks are doing, you know what? Don't be afraid of them. What we should be cautious of is editing what's being said to fit our perspective. That's the great danger. Ions is in this realm. I love Ions. I love the people in Ions. I may not agree with a lot of them. And I have an open door policy telling them we edit nothing. It is as it is told. You don't like it? Sorry, that's their NDE, which means they are telling their NDE. And if they're honest, you'll get a different perspective. I lay it all at the feet of Jesus, all of it. Lay it all down there, folks. Don't sit there and say, well, I'm not going to listen to him because he's not a Christian. John Burke, Pastor John Burke's a huge fan of this project. He's on the project. He's been interviewed for the project. We can't wait to interview him for the next episode, which is episode 2, the one we're fundraising for. We want to interview Dr. Rajiv Party. And most of you guys in the NDE community know that he's a Hindu. He was a secular Hindu. But you know what? He had a real Damascus Road experience because he had all the cars, the houses. His wife's a dentist with her own practice. He's the chief anesthesiologist at Bakersfield Heart Hospital in California. Bring in the money. They got everything. And he goes up there and he finds his father who died years before near a corridor of hell, who shows him down the corridor of hell, the generational curses of men and their family going back to the beginning who've abused their children, in particular their sons, and says, you have to stop the generational curse. Well, we know that to be true in the Bible. There are generational curses. And then he meets with the archangels Michael, Raphael, and the angel of light, who he believes was Jesus. Now, this is a secular Hindu. What's he got to do with Jesus? You know what? Jesus is the only person who says doesn't get into heaven. Only Jesus. We need to get out of the seat Stop judging people and say, you know what, Lord, I give them over to you. Personally, I want to strangle them. I don't believe them. But, and I'm talking to myself here, folks. We got to give it over to Jesus. We have to let him be Lord of Lords and Light of Lights, and he is the decider who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. It's our job to talk about our love for Christ. That's what we're called to do. Nothing else. We're not called to judge. I hate looking at sin, but I must love the sinner. Or as Mary Neal said, who is a believer, who's politically opposite from me, by the way, she said, Todd, we're called by God to love people, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to like them. So that's the premise of Life Beyond Death. We go to different individuals. 2 of the 3 that we've done are solid believers. As you well know, most of you, Howard Storm was a militant atheist, professor, chairman of the art department, Kentucky, Northern Kentucky University, mocked all people of faith, dies in Paris, France, on the operating table when his stomach exploded, taken to what I would call the front porch of hell, and is mutilated beyond belief by demons. What demons? People who are there in hell, so filled with rage and angst, weeping and gnashing of teeth that they shred him because of their anger and hatred of who they became, who they wanted to be. He calls out that Jesus with the faith of a 5-year-old. That's the last time he knew Jesus as Superman. This militant atheist at 35, 36 years old calls out to Jesus and says, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. And Jesus came to him in hell. Demons disappear. He heals him and takes him out of hell. Radically changed. Damascus Road experience on steroids. He wants to go to seminary. He loses his professorship, loses his chairmanship. His wife, who's an atheist, his kids who are atheists, cut him off. Talk about sacrifice. Talk about Jesus talking to the rich young ruler. You know, you got one more thing to do. Howard gave it all up for the Lord. So we tell his story and a little bit of his aftermath. We tell Mary Neal's story, everyone's very familiar with Mary's. But part 2 of Mary is her advanced knowledge, which is episode 2. The other half of episode 2, I'd like to be Dr. Raj Party, because his is a little bit shorter, and I'm working, like I said, with John Burke on that one. Because how are we as Christians going to communicate with a Hindu when they can look at every religion and find something they can hang their hat on? And you know what? The thing is, but he met with Jesus. And I even talked to Raj on the phone. I said, okay, Raj, you almost went through a divorce. He was ripped asunder. And he said, I love my wife with all my heart, but she doesn't understand me. She doesn't understand why I came back and said, sell it all. We're selling the houses, the cars. God told me through the angel Raphael, the angel of healing, and Michael, the angel of all angels, the chief of all angels, how to heal people here and here. That's where the center of healing begins. Not too bad when you think about people who live in hate. It usually kills them before it kills the person they hate. So we'd like to get Dr. Raj Party. We want to get part 2 of Mary Neal. Mary Neal's in the can. We shot it. And it's going to be a painful one because that's the one most people know about. But it's also part 2 of her advanced knowledge, which is the healing of her husband that she does not want to talk about. I love Bill Neal. I have met with him. I have been on the Snake River with him. I'd love to have him guide me on the Snake River for trout fishing. I'm a fly fisherman. But he and Mary have a very rigid relationship when it comes to her NDE and what he wants to be involved in and not. And that's something, hey, folks, I'm talking to you, Pegi. The kids of the NDEs, the NDEers, 65% get divorced. The spouses of these NDEers, that person comes back. They're different. It's not the same person you married at all. And there's a lot of damage there. And I asked Mary, I said, hey, Mary, what do you kids think about this? Your NDE. She said, I've never asked them. You've never asked them. You've written 2 books. You've toured all over the world. You've talked to people, TED Talks, every single major show on the planet. You haven't asked your own kids. about your NDE and how it has affected them. No,
I understand that.
there is a fear of losing. When you get to that point and you're asking difficult questions or answering difficult questions, there's a danger of losing your family members. It's like having two different political parties in the same family. God help us all. We all have it. But the thing is, I think it's even beyond that, because we're talking the eternal here. And so Bill and Mary love each other with all their heart. They live independent lives together. They're both doctors. Even though they're retired, they're still doctors. They still have their own spheres of influence. And they have both decided that Bill will not speak about it. Yet Bill was directly touched by her advanced knowledge. She's written about it twice. She will not speak about it. She gets angry at me when I keep asking her questions, but I'm like a dog with a bone. She calls me that. I'm a dog with a bone. Todd's like a dog with a bone. And the thing is, it's like, look, you wrote about it. Why don't you talk about it? Because I'm not allowed to talk about it. But you wrote about it, but I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Not allowed by her husband?
Yes. And I love Bill, and I understand their arrangement. It is necessary for their relationship. Some things, some subjects are just too painful or too divisive for couples, families to talk about. So we avoid them.
Yeah.
We all know the example in our own families. We all have that one thing, that one person, that one piece of history. And it's a sensitive issue.
Yeah.
But God, I love them both.
And, just because I can go on a podcast and talk about every intimate detail in my life doesn't mean that my husband would come on here and talk about it, or my kids. We just don't do that in public, let alone get on a podcast. People are they're not in that. It's not their personality.
Yeah, well, and it's also not their story. Mary's right in that. You're right in that as well, Peggy. It's not their story, but at the same time, those people are directly affected, because the person who comes back from an NDE is generally not the same person who left. Are you the same person?
No.
Right.
Not at all. Not at 5 years old or not at 25.
There you go. And so if you're 25 having your first one, 30, whereas Mary was, she was 32, 35, hadn't lost anyone in her family at that age, hadn't lost anybody that she knew of. And so when she goes to heaven, it's not like she's meeting her mother, her father, her grandparents, her kids, and everything. No one's died that she really knows. And she's greeted by what she calls beautiful somethings, angels. We'll call them angels because that's a common term, but beautiful something. She won't put a term on it. Got it. And she feels so loved by Jesus, who has held her, so loved by these angelic creatures, these people who have known her since the beginning of time, before she was born on this earth. And so that's another question we need to talk about. Is this your lifespan? Is this it? Or are we going upstairs and floating on clouds and playing fiddles? I don't think so. I think God has, like Howard Storm, he says, basically, I asked Jesus, what's life about? He says, this is a learning experience for you. You're a new creation of God, and you're going to like going to school. He says, you mean like kindergarten? No, not even that. Like pre-K4, pre-K3. I'm not saying reincarnation. Don't hear that word. I am not saying that. But our souls, as God created, goes forward from our life. We don't just go to heaven and sit down and praise Jesus. He's got things for us to do. That would be fantastic. I mean, I would be excited as all get out. What more is there to do? Where can I go? Where can you send me? Of course, that's God's choice, not my choice. That's what my desire is. But I put all of my hopes and desires in Christ, because I know that whatever he chooses will be the best. And what I see in NDEs, Peggy, they're advanced recon people. You people go over the hill and you're into the promised land. You're seeing into the promised land. And like Joshua and Caleb, you're coming back to the other side and going, oh, yeah, there's giants over there, but you should see the trees and the figs and the water and the fish and the wonderful everything. It's fantastic. And we just knocked these people out. We're there. And most of the people there go, oh, no. There's giants there. We don't want to go there. They wanted to listen to the 10, not to the 2. And so the thing is, I look at NDEers as the two, as a Joshua or Caleb going and looking. They may not see the same thing, but there's some things that are overlapping. All right. To love God with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and to love others as he has loved us. That seems to be a fairly general overlap. Now, whether all the NDEers are saying Jesus is the only way, no, they're not. You know what? Not my problem. That's for the Lord. Because, as he said, they've been somewhere. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. He gives them the opportunity to open. I had a friend. She is a lawyer. Haven't seen her in 35 years. Worked with her at Houston PBS many years ago when I was a producer there starting off. And she was my host. Brilliant lawyer. Produced, one of the producers for what's the vice president under Clinton? Having a mind boof.
Oh, Cheney.
Al Gore.
Oh.
Inconvenient Truth. She's one of the producers. Okay, you get an
I'm
idea.
off a president.
Yeah, you get an idea. Yeah, you get an idea what her politics are, left of center. All right. She types in, because people are dying in her family. She's my age. She's early 60s. She types in, near-death experiences, and my show comes up on top. I don't know how, because everyone else comes up. Pegi comes up before mine does. But in this case, it came up first. She goes, I know Todd Hewey. And so she info at lifebeyonddeath.tv. And I answer the emails like, wow, Carrie Anna, she's moved. She says, can I watch those shows? I let her see them as personal invitations. She's weeping at the end of each one of them. She's a secular Catholic, walked away from her faith. And she's just weeping at the end of Mary, the last one. She saw Mary, the last one. And she's got a million questions, but now she's on her path because finally she knows that there's a loving God out there who loves all of us. And so that's what your stuff is, Pegi. That's what your stuff is doing. That's what my stuff is doing. It's others who truly want to introduce God to people. And then we just let Jesus do the miracles.
Mm-hmm.
So
because God is in all of our stories.
Yeah.
Whether somebody comes on and say, I don't think that was God, but this is what happened, that we may still see God in it, even though they don't.
Yeah, they may not identify it as such.
And Mary, I can understand where she's coming from, because there's things in my life that I think I might have healed them through prayer, but I won't talk about it. And it's very personal. It's like, you don't want to, to me, that is proof of being legit, because a true healer doesn't go around telling everybody you heal people. Like a fake healer's out here saying, I'm a healer, everybody, pay me this money and put me on Oprah. And that's just my opinion. And I think for Mary to have her reservations, I can really feel her heart, because that is something sacred that I'm sure as her husband is, he has, I'm sure, a different viewpoint on it, but I imagine for her, it'd probably feel very sacred and intimate and not something she wants to boast about. Just like Jesus isn't in everybody's NDE or that proves this or that, Jesus is humble. It's not going to be all flashy, glory to Jesus in every NDE. It's going to be focus on the person and what they need.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And that's an interesting perspective you put on that from Bill and Mary's perspective. He loves her. I did ask him, I said, did everything that she's talked about, did it happen? He said, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
She was dead. She was dead in the river. You can't be 30 minutes underwater, people, even if it's freezing. And it wasn't. It was nice. It was like 72 degrees.
And I know she feels guilty because she has children and she was in heaven and she was fine. That the kids would be fine.
I don't want to come back. That's in the show, and she's actually in the promo, people. If you go to lifebeyonddeath.tv, click on the episodes. The first thing you'll see when you're there is the torch reel, and we talked about this just before the show went on. We created the 16-minute torch video for Angel. We sent it to them a day and a half later, which they never do. They came back. They said, man, we want to look at this thing. We want to put this before the guild. This is unbelievable. But we would have to sign an agreement, a legal agreement that gives them first refusal, and we can't do anything with this thing for up to a year. Now, talk to Martin Tanner, your friend, my friend. an attorney. He said, well, look at it their point of view. You know, if they want to invest in the guild and see if they can't find the completion funding and maybe find distribution, and because it's an ongoing anthology, it's 4 episodes, but we really wanted 6. But we funded 3, looking for the 4th. We need $135,000 in donations or $150,000 if an entity wants to be a part owner.
Isn't Dr. Party your 4th?
Dr. Party would be the actual 5th.
Okay.
Reason, and that's if we got enough money. I mean, Martin's hilarious. He says, I want all 6. He says, let's just go after the big kahuna. Let's go after the let's see, 150,000, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, let's go after 450,000, get all 6. Because it's $150,000 an episode. Now, that is in line with episodic television and our top quality. We're just top as it gets. And we decided to go with animation rather than reenactments because I said combat artist, a courtroom artist, a police artist. People can look at it, get the information conveyed, but you don't pay attention to and say, well, look at that stupid guy wearing those stupid little wings, or look at that cheesy background or whatever. We go with the art and people relax and they go with the story, with the art. And then we hire artists who have a style that meets their story. I mean, we had Sarah Mills, who designs games for major gaming companies, board games. She did Mary Neal. She has a chalk style. It's absolutely beautiful. Love her style. She's so popular, it's so hard to get her. I have to grovel at her feet if she does any more for us. Hyuji Matsumura, who does all kinds of crazy anime stuff. He's based in Kyoto, Japan. Interesting background. I love this guy. And he has every conceivable style. He's doing Dr. Raj Party. He did some of the Hell Story. The other part of the Hell Story, which was Howard Storm, was Darius Corey, who has a very monochromatic black and white hard edge style. I wanted him initially to do, and that was the first story we finished, was Howard Storm, to do proof of concept, to see whether it would work. Well, as we got further along, working with other artists, we went back and we said, we got to redesign Howard, because it's not good enough anymore, because we improved. We were like Disney animation. There's my editor, Arturo, and myself and my artist. That was Disney animation first, 3 people. And we had to do all of it. It's not full animations, but it works. And then we brought in a friend of mine who's a very well-known author, Kevin Tumlinson. I've known Kevin for years. We've worked together. And he's one of those mid-journey artists. And he said, I said, Kevin, I wish I could get portraits from hell. I wish I could get National Geographic to go down there and take portraits of people in hell. He said, I can do that. I went, what do you mean you can do that? He says, I do a lot with mid-journey art with my covers. He said, get yourself a professional license and I'll do it for you. And he did. And it's in the Howard Storm episode. There's 1 or 2 that we show you in the trailer. And it looks like someone went down there and took a portrait of people suffering in hell. And those artists put the flesh on the bone of our structure. And of course, good interviews, phenomenal editing, great music that was done. And praise God, we laid this at God's feet and he laid it out. And now we have this model. Each episode is a half hour. A broadcast half hour, which is 20-30. We want to control the editorial. Why? Because if a Netflix picks it up, they may say, well, we'll pick it up, but you got to cut out all that Jesus stuff. And the answer is niet. 999. Not happening. Pick your language. No. And so we have to control it. And like
what about PureFlex?
We could go to PureFlex. I've got a contact there. A good buddy I know is done with that. I'll go to Angel first. If we don't get the money, if we don't get $135,000 in donation by the end of this month, which means if everyone who's a member of yours gave $15, we'd be there. We'd literally be there. We could finish episode 2. Now we have 4 episodes, which is a first season, with the promise of 2 more, because what happens then is we go to the networks and we say, we got our first 4 and we have options. We got the stories ready to do the next 2. And then we could do, since it's an anthology, we can expand our concept. The concept was this, folks. There's a ton of NDEs out there. And I cast no light of dispersion and no light of distrust on any of them. They are powerful, powerful stories of the individual. But I said, okay, if I have to draw a line in the sand, where do I want to draw my plumb line? And the plumb line was, who are the 5 most trusted professions in the world? According to every survey in every major country, they are doctors, nurses, scientists, teachers, and first responders. Those are the people we trust most. You notice I didn't say pastors? Isn't that a sad commentary on the church? But those are the 5 most trusted professions, whether you're a believer in God or not. People put their trust in those people most. So I said, okay, let's make those the candidates for the first season, the first 6 of the anthology. They have to be a doctor, a nurse, a teacher or professor, a first responder, and
I was a homicide detective. One of my first guests, Randy Schiffler, was a homicide detective, and he was deputy director of the Ohio Peace Officer Academy. He was right under the Attorney General. He was a non-believer. He died of COVID.
Well, see, you're
And
a great source. I could
he
find
had an amazing. He said, I could prove this NDE in a courtroom. And if you heard his NDE, you would know he had a witness. There was a man in heaven. He said, you tell Madison that that her grandpa's okay. And he come back later. He's like, I don't know any Madison. I don't know who that was. And it happened to be a woman was cutting his hair, and it was Madison. And she just happened to just move there as this beautician. She's married to a doctor. And he said, did your grandpa this and that? And, you know, this man in heaven was on a white front porch making red, white, and blue flags. And she said, that was my grandpa. He was very involved with the veterans and making this. And like he had won some kind of award or recognition for, you know, being this veteran. And she said, that's not the first time that her grandfather sent a message back to someone that had an NDE. A guy was in a car wreck, and he'd come back with a message for this guy in heaven's wife and said, he wants you to know he's okay. And he said, I could prove this in court. Awesome.
And there's so much evidence. You're absolutely correct. Well, see, you're a marvelous source to finish the first season, and we can move from there. We just got to find people of faith. And God bless David Cirillo. He didn't have to do this. He knew he was going to catch heat from conservative Christians. I mean, I worked for Jerry Falwell, but Jerry Falwell was a closet evangelical. Just want to let you guys know that. You know, Thomas Road Baptist Church was pretty dry and concrete, but I worked for them during the PTL fiasco, and he saw people of faith watching the ministry go down, but at the same time praising God. He said, man, I wish my people had this kind of fervent passion for Jesus. And I don't know where I'm really going with that, except to say, if people of faith will give a little bit of money to the stuff that's happening out there, we can get the message out in a way that will cause people like my friend Cariana, that would cause other people who may have grown up in the church and are agnostic, or they were hurt by the church. Church has hurt a lot of people. I mean, my whole country, Ireland, was ripped asunder under the name of God. The Catholic Church and the Protestants, the orange and the green, ripped each other. 200 years of violence. All right. Over Jesus? Are you kidding me? We can go out there. NDEs are a healing balm that can cover all of this stuff and get people to focus on God, the infinite, on Jesus Christ, the almighty power of God on earth, who comes with the Holy Spirit. I mean, I think it's a phenomenal way of introducing non-believers, scientifically minded people, medically minded people, law-minded people, rational-minded people to Christ.
And, you know, the guy that makes like the Case for Christ and those, he had a NDE movie, like Case for Heaven here a couple years ago. I was so excited. Oh my God, I hated it. I really think
most NDEs should not be movies. I don't think NDEs should be movies. And the reason being is movies are designed to lift us out of his chair and take us somewhere else. What I've designed this series to be is it's visually and emotionally powerful. I'm a Wagnerian historian, which means we look at history from the point of view of why were decisions made. Yes, it was factual, but there's emotion behind every decision that has happened in history. So we try and find the emotional core of the individual. What were they thinking? What were they feeling? Because you don't react out of clear rational thought. That's 2020. People react out of this, out of their passions, out of their anger, out of their fear. That's where the people, that's a Wagnerian historian. That's who I am. So that's what we try to dial into this is the
and how it changed their life afterwards.
Yes. Oh, it changed the lives of millions and millions and millions of people on the earth, that depending upon what their decision was, whether it's good or evil or indifferent, because that has an impact as well.
That you're doing this because, the NDE community, and I've harped on here a lot, has really rejected the Christian near-death experience. And they're supposed to be doing scientific evidence, but it's not scientific when you are withholding evidence of God. Dr. Jeffrey Long, his book, God in the Afterlife, was amazing because, it let that evidence come through where other people were hiding it.
Yeah, Jeff Long's in our series. He's a huge supporter of the project. I'll be interviewing him again. The thing that I love about Jeff, he's a scientist, he's an oncologist, he's a doctor, but he says, look, we have to let the planks fall where they fall. I remind my ions friends, we leave the planks where they fall. They don't agree with them. There are people there who don't agree. I love them anyway. And I encourage them, as scientists, you must let the story be told. You may disagree with it. You may disagree, say I don't believe in a hell. Fine. This person does. It's one story. Lay it down.
These aren't just...
Lay it down. This person meant this. Lay it down. Yeah. It's not our job to say, we're going to grab this group.
Censor it.
And we're going to censor that group. No, our job is to lay it down and present it to the people and let the people decide. Mm-hmm. That means getting out of the way. You have no idea, working for a Christian ministry, how hard that concept was to sell. They said, we're going to have a lot of conservative Christians going to think you're an apostate. Okay, I've been called an apostate my whole life. I'm a Protestant Irishman. I'm an apostate to every Catholic in Ireland. It's fine. I'm a believer in Jesus. That's who I rest my hat on, Jesus. So God bless David Cirillo for saying, okay, I'll let you stick your head into the noose. Go ahead. God bless him. He put $460,000 out. We need $135,000 in donations to finish, and $150,000 if they want to partially own it. If there's some people who want other funding options, is all I can say, since we're a nonprofit. But if they call me or email me and they say, hey, I'm interested in that other option, 150,000, 50,000, 3 at 50,000, then I can talk to them. But I can't.
And we just proved Christians, and they may not all be Christian, but the beer drinking conservatives made a point when they all boycotted Bud Light. Mm-hmm. We can make an impact if we all focus on a cause and say, I'm putting my money there, or I'm not going to do this, I'm turning away from that. We can make a stand as a collective.
You're absolutely right, Peggy. And the other thing is this: the church has failed. I'm sorry, but I put all the horrid things we see out there. We blame the Democrats. We blame the demon rats. We blame the rhinos. We blame everybody else. No, I blame the church. I blame the church because the church in the 1960s under the Johnson administration was silenced by an act through Congress that said, we'll give you tax exempt status if you shut up and say nothing about the political regime and what we stand for. Judas took 30 pieces of silver. The church gave up everything for a tax exemption. The church should be the place where we speak about things of God, things that are morally right and morally wrong. Now, I'm not saying that NDEs are morally right and morally wrong. There's different perspectives, but all of those people really want to come back. They come back in the name of love. I'm not going to say, well, you're in the name of love, but you don't know Jesus, so you're going to hell. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to let Jesus deal with that. The thing is, that's a work in progress. How many of us, the guy who wrote Amazing Grace, he was a slave ship driver. And he wrote Amazing Grace when he finally realized the number of voices he silenced. We have to give God the opportunity to cook inside of a person the length of time they need to come to him. We can't just put a nail to the coffin and say, well, you're not a believer, so I'm not going to let you speak. But we should voice the righteousness of God, the truth of God in all of our venues. And so that's what we're trying to do here indirectly, because the church has lost its authority to speak. Sorry, but not sorry, as Steve Bannon would say. Sorry, not sorry. Because what the Catholic Church has done with the abuse of kids, with the abuse of an edict that they say men shouldn't marry, that's a Paul talked about that as the best way of doing it is if you don't marry. But rather than burn, every man should have his own wife. All right? The Catholic Church ignored that second part. And look what they've happened. They got a bunch of pedophiles in there. I mean, for crying out loud, I've got Catholic brothers and sisters who love Jesus. I call them jarheads for Jesus. They're Marine Corps for Jesus. They're totally sold out. They've got their rosary. Look, everyone loves The Chosen probably out there, right?
Right.
You know, the lead actor is a born-again Catholic. He's solid as a rock. He loves his Catholicism. He and Mark Wahlberg started that app that's so popular on our phones. Can't remember it at the moment. It's on my phone, but brain doesn't work that well. But the thing is, so where's God going to go if he's not going to go to the church? Because the church won't speak truth because they're afraid of offending their congregation. No, never be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Stand on the truth. And if half the congregation walks out, so be it.
Yeah.
Guys, we got to put a stake in the ground and say, here and no further.
Yeah.
And therefore, NDE stories is a way of actually getting people to come to the table rationally through people who they say, well, I respect doctors, I respect nurses, I respect professors, I expect, first responders. I respect these five groups. And they're saying something that touches my heart. Well, maybe that takes them to God. Maybe that's the back door.
Well, our churches don't want anyone believing in near-death experiences. They say it's the devil, and which I can see because the new age stuff in near-death experience community nowadays is like borderline witchcraft, in my opinion, when they start this channeling and telling people to use ketamine and you'll have a near-death experience, and using NDEs to promote abortion. And well, yeah, that is pretty close to the devil. So, but it's like, say, we're not getting out the Christian NDEs. We're not getting, if they're being silenced. And to me is, I'll tell you what, my first moment in the bright white light at 25, all I seen was bright white light. And I was like, wow, it's real. The whole God, Bible, Jesus thing, it's real. I didn't see anything yet, but it's just, I was in the bright white light. I wasn't, worm bait. And I'm like, wow, it's real. And I just started talking to God as if you're just praying to God. And I was like, God, you need to send people back so they can tell people that it's real, because they don't know. And, the Bible, people getting tired of it. And it's from a long time ago. And it's just not effective anymore. And if people got sent back and it was real, I had no idea in 1986 when I come back that I was going to end up doing this. And they say, go tell it from a mountain, that song. But, and then to be silenced and to try to keep God out of it, I felt like I had to, like I'm Wonder Woman, like I had to give NDEs back to their rightful owner. I had to give them back to God. I felt like they were stolen from God by the New Age NDE group.
Well, the enemy will always try and counterfeit that which is real. That's what he is. He's the chief counterfeiter. He was in charge of worship in heaven. I mean, he was right up there. Yeah, but he wanted the glory for himself. So I understand that. I understand
NDEers that had their NDE from committing suicide, we have noticed that they all were lied to. Like, I don't know if that's the devil, is that Satan, but they were lied to leading up to that. Oh, this will be fine. This will be good. This will end your problems. They were groomed. This voice was grooming them to that.
Yeah, sounds like screw tape letters. I
What
mean,
is
it
it?
sounds like screw tape letters.
I never heard. What is that?
Writing screw tape. C.S. Lewis, the screw tape letters.
I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
The book. It's a great book written during World War II by C.S. Lewis. You know, Lion, Witch, Wardrobe, Mere Christianity. He wrote the screw tape letters. It's an examination of evil from the perspective of a chief demon writing letters to screw tape, who is a demon in charge of pestering a man and following him to lead him away from Jesus. It's like Nefarious, which came out in the theaters a couple months ago. That comes out on DVD this month, or Blu-ray, whatever you want, where the Catholic Church, the chief exorcist, saw Nefarious in the theater. And they said, what do you think? Because there's no violence, there's no head spinning, there's no vomit or anything like that. There's just this demon sitting in this mass murders in a jail cell on the eve of execution, who's basically telling him how evil has won. And the thing is, the chief exorcist of the Vatican said, that is evil. That is a perfect personification of what I come in contact with people who are literally possessed. It's not the head spinning and vomiting and all that stuff. That's all Hollywood nonsense. It's pure, cold, calculated, going to get you with your own hubris.
One famous NDEer that brings in huge crowds and is always speaker at the conference. And she tells people that, and she has a very heavy military and government background. She tells people that aborted babies all talk to her, like she channels them, and they all say the same thing. And she laughs when she says it. They all want aborted and reincarnated later. And I'm like, if that isn't the devil, I don't know what is.
Pure unadulterated evil. That's evil.
Using near-death experiences.
Yes, because the enemy will always pervert that which is meant to be good. He cannot do anything but. So, anyway, back to our little project.
Yeah.
Here, why you're having me on.
Right.
Is you got 18,000 members. Everyone puts $15 in. We're working. Okay. What happens is we control the editorial, which is our answer quest. The principle of answer quest is to preserve the story as told. So I apologize in advance if you hear Raj Party bring up some Hindu concepts. That's why I've got John Burke working with me, because he studied Hinduism. I'll tell you, that's an enigma and a riddle rattling around in your head. I've been to India. You know, it's an acronym for I'll never do it again. I love India. But the thing is, it's like I want to know how Raj has couched knowing Jesus and these archangels with his faith, giving up that which the world, I mean, his truly was the ultimate Damascus Road experience. He gave up everything like Howard. He turned an about face and went in the other direction. His wife wanted to divorce him because she said, I'm not going to live my life with a man who had everything. And now you care about healing people and you want to sell everything we have and live in a little house and drive a Toyota Corolla. And because you say that none of this stuff matters, this means nothing. This is burning up. Well, that's what scripture says too, right? Ain't taking, no U-Hauls going to heaven, folks. Coming naked, going out naked.
And so Evan, you know, to be a neurosurgeon and to come out and say you had a near-death experience that you rode on the wing of a butterfly.
Yeah, I mean
that's courage.
People thought Eben's a Fruit Loop. I worked with Eben. Here's what makes me different than any other one. I go back to my candidates as I edit, approving all the edits, approving their dialogue that I recorded on tape in 4K. I go back, I review the artist renditions with them. So when you go to the lifebeyonddeath.tv website and go to all the reviews, you will see that they love our story because it's their story. Howard says, I don't want anyone else to tell my story. This is the official story. I can't comprehend anyone doing a better job. Todd literally did not pervert my story. Mary says the same thing. And Mary's, I call her my brown trout. She's a fly fisherman, way better than me. I'm like someone with Tourette syndrome. I mean, she and Bill are gorgeous fly fishermen. They're like artists, you know, but she's like a brown trout. She comes up and she'll look at Addie and you'll get her some to talk and then she'll just drift away and disappear because she's really a reclusive woman. She's had to learn how to stand in front of public and talk because she much prefers to be in the shadows. And her self-effacing humor. I love her self-effacing humor. Some people think it's an irritant, but I don't, because she feels, here she is, she's a spinal brain surgeon, folks. She says, I have no creativity. I have less creativity than the tip of my finger. And I'm telling you stuff that you should put me in a mental hospital. And so she laughs about it because she's had doctors come to her and say, that's a pretty serious lack of oxygen you had there. She says, explain to me medically, scientifically, how I could be underwater for 30 minutes and return to being a brain neurosurgeon, microscopic. Explain to me in any way.
She's orthopedic, isn't she?
Orthopedic spinal surgeon.
Gotcha.
All right.
Wow.
She has the brain. She has to know the spinal cord and how to operate with molecular precision stuff, And
Eben, his brain was mush.
Oh, his brain was 97% pus. I have all the diagrams up there with his notations pointing it out. See, and the thing is with Mary, it goes beyond it. He had to save her twice because she had ARDS. Her lungs turned into sponges. She couldn't oxygenate. And she and her husband, Bill, after she survives the drowning with those angels on the riverbank,
on a plane.
they get on what did they get on a plane to fly back to America? It's like, does that sound like a kid who basically hurt himself and runs back to mom? They were running back home to Jackson Hole. Are you kidding me? But they did. They feel embarrassed about it. They didn't stop at Salt Lake when they flew in. They came all the way back. But the thing is, the doctor there said, you're dead. You can't come back from this. This ARDS, you have no way of oxygenating. Jesus had to come in.
When I die, I want to die like Mary Neal. Thy will be done. And just give it to God.
Yeah, had to save her. Yeah, that's it. It's like, she says, I have no fear of death. Go out and live life. In fact, the message she has for all of us is you cannot save your life by withholding it. Spend your life. Spend it fully. You want to ride the motorcycle and take the risk, but that gives you complete joy? Do it. You want to be, she's back kayaking. She's been back to the Fui River. I said, have you done Upper Fui where you died? She said, no, but I do Lower Fui. She's going back to that area. She's, the guy who did the video of the Fui River where she died, Boyd, his name has escaped me at the moment. Boyd. He is a professional kayak guide. He said, where she died in the Fui? I said, Upper. He says, I know exactly where she died. A lot of people die there. He says, I died kayaking. He said, I don't talk about it because all my kayaker friends would say, man, you're a real nutburger. But he said, I was
squad that was there. It was like impossible that a squad was there, but a squad was there when they got to the end of where she was. And
so the thing is,
crazy.
These NDEs encourage other NDEers to share their stories. Some of them negatives, by the way. Jeff Long believes this. Howard believes this. John Burke. We believe there's many more negative NDEs than are reported, anywhere between 1% and 8%. And it's all over the map. You can't agree. No one agrees. But what we do agree with is post-traumatic stress syndrome in men in combat, women in combat. They come back, they can't talk about the horror. They can only talk about the stupid things, the funny things. And we believe these people coming back have post-traumatic stress. And those who can talk about the horrible NDEs are opening the door for those people to share because we know they're out there. They just won't talk about it.
And when I interviewed Eben's girlfriend, after I interviewed Eben, she's a non-believer all the way. Yeah, always has been. Karen Knoll, his life partner, I guess they call each other, complete non-believer. And she thinks that everybody is in the NDE community. And I'm thinking, yeah, because Christians have been silenced.
Well, I try and avoid those conversations with Karen. I love Karen. I've been to their house numerous times. Eben, I care for him greatly. He cares very much about this project. Not that he's a Christian, but he cares that we're telling his story. We care that we're telling Mary's story. We're telling Howard's story. We're telling the story.
That's evidence, too, that he's not a Christian, because this isn't Christians out here trying to promote their religion by saying they had an NDE. If that's what atheists think we're doing. There's the atheists trying to keep the Christians out of NDEs, but then on the other end of it, you have people that think, oh, they're just saying they had an NDE because they're Christian. They're trying to get people to believe in God. Well, Eben, he don't believe in God, but he's telling his NDE and he's standing by it. He's making it his life mission to tell his story.
He's evolved past that. Even Karen will say that. He's left out. I had to leave it out because of time. When he first stepped back into church with Holly, his first wife, he saw angels in there, and he broke down into tears. He just wept uncontrollably, embarrassing himself, his wife, the congregation. They had to pull him out of church. He was deeply impacted by the love of God. Where he has gone with that, that's for him. I don't agree where he's going with it. I think he's gone in the direction of being a co-creator with God. That's his thing. You have full autonomy. I am not going to agree with him. I'm not going to disagree with him. It's where he has gone. Karen will say he is a completely different person from his first book to his third book.
I think people heard him on Oprah and other news channels and things. I think we assume, and I read his first book when he goes deep into his story. And I think we all probably, I say we all, but I assumed that he was Christian. And so when Karen started telling me, oh no, and she started naming other people that's not either, that I assumed were, I think they are. I think she don't want to admit it, because I just can't believe that they're not Christian. Other NDEs that are famous. I'm like, oh no. Like I think they're afraid to say they are. I'm not saying Eben, but I think some of them are afraid to say they are because they will get uninvited. They will get cast out. And so in fact, I've had several tell me that, oh, I'm pro-life and I'm Christian too, but I'll never tell this NDE community because I'll be blacklisted.
Well, I know Karen is not. Eben, he believes that Jesus, this is my interpretation of what he's told me. Okay. I will put that out there first. I believe he has said, and I have it on tape, Jesus is one to show us the way. He shows us the way, but he's not the way. God is the way. God's love is the way. We are one giant the universe is a giant consciousness, sphere of consciousness. Jan Holden says the same thing with ions. And each one of us is a molecule in that consciousness. We're all interconnected, yet we're all individuals. Okay, I can buy that in some way. Yeah. We're all individuals. We're all.
I mean, I love looking at NDEs through a religious lens, through a scientific lens, through all kinds of lenses. It doesn't take just one lens to look at these and be in awe.
There is an all-powerful, loving life force, God force, as Eben calls it, a God force. God, put a name on it. Let's say, what did God call himself? Tell him I am sent you. Mm-hmm. So God calls himself I am. All right. So let's put that in the mix. Throw that name in the bowl. The fact of the matter is, they said there's an almighty, powerful God of the universe that loves each one of us as if we are his only creation. Scripture talks about knowing every hair on our head. He knows every sparrow that falls on the ground. I mean, this is a God
before we were born. We were in our mother's womb.
Before we were born, before we were knitted in our womb, as David said. And the things, you look up in the stars, you see, remember what was who was the author who wrote Contact?
I don't know.
They made a movie. Anyway, he looks up, his big phrase was, and he wasn't a believer in Jesus, I look up in all the stars and all the synchronicity and all the balance of the universe. I say, man, it's such a big place. It would be a shame if we're the only thing out there. Good question. I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying there's not. Even though if you look at the news lately, it looks like we're having aliens coming and knocking at our doorstep every 2 weeks with all these ships flying around. You could say, well,
there's an alien element to near-death experiences too.
Yeah, there's, cross-dimensional. We know that there's cross dimensions for a fact. That's
time slips.
Huh?
Slips in time. You go, you have your life review, you're back in time. And, when during my second NDE, I saw the future if I died and didn't come back. Because I said, if my sons would be better off without me, I agree to stay. But if not, I beg to return. And then suddenly there's Jesus from behind. And I was right beside him, went down. And we saw my little boys in the future. They were discussing the fact that mom had died. And my middle Jeremy is very sensitive. And he says, I don't care that you say mom died. I want her back. And I want her back right now. And I felt his pain so bad. I retracted and I'm back up in the white light of heaven, sobbing at Jesus' feet. He's sitting beside God. And so it was like, mind boggling, how did I see a future that never happened? And so there's so
Because
many
God orchestrates
lenses to
all of
look
our
at
steps.
these.
God knows every possible step we can make in our lives. And you can explain it. Look, the Jews could sit there and say they believe in predestination, they believe in free will. How's that compute? Because in God, it's all the same thing.
It's told most everybody, they're told it's not your time, go back. I was told it is your time. The answer is no, that I couldn't go back. But okay, what's this about time? We all have a time. That's just a mind boggling in itself. And if people aren't taking these seriously and just going, that's just dumb, and not realizing there's so much science to be learned here.
Yes.
From out of body experiences, to be able to observe things outside your body, to how our bodies under extreme stress, may not even a death or illness, but extreme stress can be out of body just the same as a death. And be out in space and observe whatever, or can be here or there. There's just so much that, somebody who take it seriously would be amazed at this world.
And that's why I think funding really good NDE projects is an incredible way to reach the super cerebral, the emotional. I'm more of an emotional guy. All right. It can reach anybody because they haven't been given the proper couching to tell the stories because the money hasn't been there. And,
they haven't been given the respect they deserve.
Right. Ours are getting the respect.
Yeah.
I mean, Bruce Grayson, no friend of Christians. Bruce Grayson, because of Eben Alexander and Jan Holden, said, I will watch your series. He doesn't like Christian stuff, he even said in his letter. I responded back to him. I said, sir, I'm a historian, and my job is not to say whether Christian, non-Christian, whatever. My job is to tell the NDE story as it is told. And as a scientist, that's what you are called to do. And we let the chips fall where they fall.
That's my favorite saying, let the chips fall where they may.
Let them fall where they fall. Jeff Long, same thing. John Burke, same thing. So I think he's going to look
at I search truth. I'm not trying to push my agenda. I'm searching truth. I want to dig in these NDEs and pick them apart and analyze from every direction. And we can't do that if people are gagged.
And Mary even said on her webinar with IONS back, we've had 4 events with IONS. We will be able to put those events without the video, just the promo, because we showed the episodes to them. We did not do well financially. People watched but didn't give. Very sad.
At IONS events?
Yeah, the IONS events. We only got about $1,000 per event, which is, I've never seen anything so little in my life. And that's sad because we thought, all of us, even at IONS, thought it would do really well. It didn't. We get 150 people, 75 people showing up at an event, and several would give substantially. I mean, substantially. But 95% of people wouldn't give a nickel. And they were free events. And so it's like, wow, okay, so let's move away from the IONS community, which maybe is having some internal issues. And let's go and see what our Christian brothers and sisters are feeling about this.
Martin Tanner, who's vice president of IONS and is a Christian and an attorney, called me while I was doing my last show. Actually, my phone rang while I was during the show, and I had heard from my phone and told me about you. And so there is good in IONS, and IONS started out good. I had Barbara Whitfield on my show. She was one of the founders of this near-death experience research. And she's a Christian. It didn't start out this way. And so I just feel like anything we can do to help bring out the truth of the experiences, not be censored. And I just love what you're doing. And I think I have 19,200 subscribers right now. So, hopefully, like you said, that everybody just give. And
yeah, I mean, I'd like to keep it in-house. I'd like to keep the editing with the core group and with the NDE in question. In other words, is this script, does this meet your approval? Does this visual, does this meet your approval? Because what we did is by giving the artist free reign, The artist listens and watches the testimony as we've edited together in the time. And then they create, based upon what they're told, what they see in their own mind. And everyone seems to love it because it gives I said, look, let your mind wander to where you feel this is going. And so far, we've hit the bullseye every time, the 3 times. And we've got a little bit of Raj's as a tease at the end of episode 4, which we moved to the end of episode 1 or so. I have to reposition the episodes because episode 2 is going to be the last one finished to the first 4, simply because the way that everything's lined up. You know how stuff lines up? You just have to finish this before that. So it wasn't chronological. We had to finish it as they came done. And so we have a scene there that has the still images are on the website for Raj Party of the archangels Michael and Raphael in this gorgeous Indian castle. And when I went to Hugh J, I said, well, how are you going to draw the Michael and Raphael? He says, they're going to be traditional, historic Hindu warriors. Because he says, that's what an Indian would see. And so when you look at them, you're seeing this traditional dress, because Jesus is Jesus for all of us. Ain't no white Jesus, black Jesus. It's whoever.
I think he was a guest on my show. I'll have to go back and check. I think he was.
Who?
Party.
Raj Party? Yeah, I love Raj. I really do. I think his marriage has survived through prayer and fasting. God bless him and his wife. And so I'm really excited to go interview him. When we were going to interview him, he was going through potential divorce and he was a mess. He adores his wife. And yet I think she has finally come to accept who he has become. God bless him. And God bless her. And boy, if there's a healed marriage there, boy, there's a message that could be put out there.
It's going to be hard on marriage because you're different when you come back. You see things through different lens.
Yes. So that's really all I got to say. I just tell you, everybody out there, go to, you can email me, Todd Hewey, but it's going to be at info@lifebeyonddeath.tv. The website is lifebeyonddeath.tv. That's where the donation button is there. It's tax deductible because it's to a nonprofit. It's an education arm. So it's tax deductible. You'll get a receipt. You can see our progress there. You can see the trailers for each of the 3 episodes, and you'll see the big torch that goes to Angel on September 1st if we don't raise the money. And if God wants us to go to Angel, we'll go to Angel. If God wants to go somewhere else, we will. We just need to lay down. We need to be able to control editorial, because I don't want a Christian perspective coming in and saying, take out everything that's not Christian.
I think Angel really made a name for themselves with the Sound of Freedom. So this would be a great follower of that.
Yeah. It's like, guys, we got to trust God on this. We got to trust Jesus. He's the big God. He can handle people saying, well, I don't want anyone who disagrees with me. You know what? I think he actually likes that conflict, that iron sharpens iron. He says, okay, come, let us reason together. That's what God says.
Yeah. I've learned the hard way to stop trying to force things and just give it to God.
It doesn't work. Magic. The more you force it, it's like a Chinese trap in reverse. It's like, I can't get this thing to work. It's like, relax. It's not in our purview. It's not our purview. It's our purview to share the love of Jesus and say, you know what? You got any questions? Ask God. Say, God, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. That's all you have to do. And then listen to the still small voice. Anyway,
all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. I'll send this out to you later today.
Hey, appreciate it. All right. God bless you now.
Bye.